Hey guys, this is What If Callum from the Dragon Prince was the Trollhunter. Okay, so first of all, disclaimer before I jump back into the series or jump back into this fanfiction, this new fanfiction I've been cooking up for a while. Sorry I'm talking so fast. I've been gone for over 2 weeks. Around, I think a week and a half, about 10 days since my last video. Because my last real video, my more than just a short, But I've been gone because junior year seems to be the hardest year so far. I'm flooded with homework again and again and again, and I just bought Dead Space, right? I am trash. I am trash at scary games like that are fast paced, like you gotta get on your toes. Like games like that get me tweaking, especially when it's dark and you can't really see much in certain framings, right? Dead Space, I've gotten killed over 1,000 times in that game. And to be honest with you, I probably will not record it because I got an entire 30 minutes of it down and recorded. But it was all laggy, and I had my headphones literally sound like a microwave. The audio was trash. So I deleted that, and I'm never going to play that game again. I'm probably going to sell it, so if you guys want Dead Space, hit me up. But, yeah, so pretty simple, guys. I'm going to be hitting you guys with a lot more gaming videos once I get my things up and running. I'm going to hit you guys with a lot more videos like stop motions, action figure content, custom videos, and a bunch more. So I hope you guys enjoy those more content as besides What If that I'm going to be giving you guys, because I really want to do those type of content besides just keep on doing What Ifs for the rest of my career on YouTube, because I don't really like What Ifs that much to only post those videos, because I like other videos to make. But enough of me yapping. I've been gone for a while, and I'm back, and I'm about to give you guys more videos. And please, I swear, my boy in the comments, he's always talking about Guts Part 3. Please bring back Guts Part 3. I'm going to get to it. And if I see you in the comments saying, please bring back Guts Part 3, I know you're not watching my videos for real. And then I'm gonna block you. So we start our story off with Callum, and how his story would change vastly different to what would happen originally if he got his hands on the amulet. If the Trollhunter, if the amulet chose him. What would happen if the Trollhunter universe was intertwined with the Dragon Prince lore? How would that affect everything and everyone? Let's dive right into it. So we start our story off with Callum's birth and his conception, and nothing would change too much. But we would know about years later, around the birth of Callum, a Trollhunter would have been chosen to be the Trollhunter. During this time, the Trollhunter would have been a big name amongst trolls. Trolls being another race alongside elves, being as intelligent and as mannered as them. Most elves would have pretty much correlations with trolls, like passing borders, and other things like that. And even having half elf stone troll people. It's confusing, but they would use the power of magic to conceive, something along those lines. But what would happen is through this whole entire part of history, trolls and elves would have still exiled humans away from Zadia because of dark magic or black magic. Black magic being around a lot longer, but the chaos of it being shown a lot around the same time the first magic user would have been made out. The first dark magic user would have actually been a brother, an adopted brother group, a troll and a human. And they would be the first connection between trolls and other civilizations. A human and a troll would be the first, I guess you could say, relationship between trolls and any other race. What would happen during this whole entire time is humans would have still been exiled away from Zadia, and through this, the Trollhunter would have been made, like in the same, about near the dawn of time, near the dawn of the trolls, where the Trollhunters or the trolls need a champion, someone to keep them safe and to keep the balance of the world at bay, to keep the world sane. Trolls wouldn't go underground since magic was still thriving and powerful, but they would still go underground when they needed to because, well, the whole them turning into stone in the sunlight. But what would happen is, through this whole entire time, not a single person would be a troll hunter. It would only be one other person that would be a troll hunter besides a troll, and that would be a very, very, very ancient elf years ago that would have been a very close friend to, well, one of the ancestors of this universe's version of Blinky. So during this time, he would have become the troll hunter. But we switched years, decades later to, well, Zadia. As Zadia would have been going through an incredible journey through their pretty much treatings with troll kind, but during this time, miles away outside of the edges of Zadia, a huge fight would have been going on between the troll hunter and some sort of evil dark moon elf. They would have been fighting and going toe to toe, as the troll hunter would have been very well versed, moving swiftly, quickly, and fast, as he would have been able to move very quickly, very athletic, even with his big troll-like physique. But eventually him being stunned down and him being stabbed in the chest, or not stabbed in the chest, but basically being pinned down in the ground as the sun would have gone up, and, well, the troll hunter would have fell. During this time, he would have gone for the amulet, as the amulet would have shot up and would have zoomed across borders and countries, and eventually found itself at the kingdom where Callum resides. Doing back at the elf would have been absolutely shocked, but also mad as freak, because his chance of getting the amulet was gone, and he had to find the new user, the troll hunter, or the new troll hunter, because the troll hunter is basically in this universe a messiah. He's literally a warrior and a god to the trolls, but also at the same time a hero and more or less a public figure to the rest of the world. And more or less, they look up to the troll hunter to be a symbol of hope for every race, to put it simple, because the elf troll hunter paved that way. And now, the humans having their own troll hunter, it will be a tie between all four realms and every other species. But it would be very hard for the very first human troll hunter to find his way. We get switched to Callum. As Callum would have been chilling in his room, still having the same conversation with Ezra, telling Ezra to stop stealing the freaking pastries, bro. But eventually, away from that, we will see that Callum would have gone with his normal studies, us getting shown the king and, well, Claudia's father. As they would have been talking and basically doing their whole thing, as their whole entire drive, and the same drive that Claudia's father would have had, was still been driven by dark magic, black magic. But him eventually getting told that something was going down, because later in that night, before the amulet crossed borders and came to, well, the kingdom, that night something would have happened. We would see, well, Rayla would have gone and basically, well, would have still let that soldier go, or pretty much that night go, after she would have chased him down and would have pretty much coated her blood or her blades in berry juice to make it look like he killed or she killed the witness, because she didn't have the heart to kill him. She didn't have the, let's just say, the kunads to take that man down. Me personally, I would have chopped his head off. I'm just saying, like, bro, if my culture, if my people needed me to take down somebody, I'm doing it. I'm an elf that could turn invisible on a full moon. That's just OP as fuck. But, well, it kind of isn't, because when are you going to want to be, when are you going to need to be invisible on the full moon unless you time that perfectly? Like, unless you have hella ops on the full moon, which no moon elf probably will have, because I'm pretty sure no people want to be beefing with the moon elves during a full moon. I wouldn't want to beef with them. But would you guys in the comments? Would you guys beef with a moon elf under a full moon? Not me. I'm not gonna get boxed up. I'm not gonna get jumped. But we see that, well, Rayla basically lets him go as he warns the kingdom. The kingdom goes on a little bit of a high end and basically pretty much prepares themselves for nightfall to keep themselves, well, locked up. And the possibility of the king dying is very real, and is very well breaking the king's psyche down. The king becomes very impatient and does still lash out at Claudia's father near the end of the story, or near the end of this arc. But between this arc, before everything would have gone down, before all these pivotal points of Callum meeting Rayla and everything would have happening, things would have changed a lot because of the amulet, the Trollhunter. The amulet would have found its way near Callum's window. After Callum would have absolutely gotten dropped by Claudia's brother in training, but him eventually basically forfeiting the training because he would have wanted to help, Callum pretty much impress Claudia, as Claudia would have always known, or would have just straight up knew that, her brother through the fight. But what would happen is, we would see that on the way back, where pretty much Callum would have been told by his father that to keep Ezra safe, but also to pack your stuff since you guys are going to go to the Winter Lodge. As pretty much Callum's confused, but Callum walks off as he's on his way back to tell Ezra to get ready, but he eventually basically finds some sort of glowing metal compass on his door frame, or his window frame. As he picks it up and looks at it, as it starts to wind and tink and pretty much wind up, as he looks at the engravings of it, as the words of it were in Trollish, but eventually they started to shift and change into English, or his language, as Callum would have read it, saying, "By the power of Merlin, daylight is mine to command," as a huge white, bluish light would have enveloped the room, as Ezra would have been confused on what was going on because he would have seen the light underneath his door, fading in and bleeding into his room. He would have opened the door and he would have seen Callum in an all silver, tweaked out, glowing blue armor with a huge sword starting to appear in his hand, as it would have fell down to the ground. As the armor would have been very chunky, but eventually the armor would have started to shrink down and fit to Callum's body. As he would have eventually looked down and would have seen the sword would have shrunk and shrinked to the human size, and basically would have become the same size as, pretty much the original Trollhunter in the Trollhunter series, pretty much is sword size. So he would have pretty much a similar armor, but in their art design, right? So what happened is Callum would have been absolutely ecstatic, but also being very scared on how armor just magically appeared on his body. But him putting two together, seeing that it was probably magic. Because earlier in this continuity, the whole magic scene with the air print and Claudia showing off her magic would have happened a little bit earlier. But him going back into the library about 30 minutes later, after he would have figured out and would have started to tweak with the armor. But before that, we would see that he would start to freak out, cutting things in two in his room, as eventually he would drop the blade, as the blade would have appeared and would have basically disappeared into a puff of blue smoke or mist, it disappearing. As Callum would be confused by this, Ezra saying, "What the heck's going on?" But also, "It looks freaking badass," as Callum would have started to freak out. Callum would have started to run around, but him calming himself down, as eventually he would have looked into he would have looked into the mirror, as his heart rate would have been pulsing and going faster and faster and faster, as eventually he would have tried to calm himself down, breathing slower and trying to convince his body that he's not in danger. He didn't know this yet, but when you're not really in danger, you don't really need a big use for your, armor. You don't really need a use for it. It kind of just goes away. So we see that it just pops off or disappears as the amulet falls off of Callum's chest and falls into his pocket. He pulls it out of his pocket and looks at it and saying, "What is this thing?" Ezra says, "What? It's the... Wait. Is that..." As Callum and Ezra run to their room after all the devastation they caused earlier, or Callum caused, and he grabs the pretty much books he's had for a couple years now, and he pulls the oldest book he has. An old children's book he looked at that would have had was the book he read all the time when he was younger and when his mother read him. It was the book of the Trollhunter. The Trollhunter would have been more of us a myth on the human side, as humans would have seen little to no Trollhunters since, their exile from Zadia. As we see that Callum would have looked in the books, seeing that it was Trollhunters years and years. Trolls for decades and decades, but eventually finding out the truth that it was never a human Trollhunter ever, but it was the most famous of them all, Morgon the Great, and also another Trollhunter, an old shadow elf would have been one of the very first elves to be a troll hunter, and probably the last one, since there's never been another elf in the entire kingdom for decades to ever find themselves in the possession of the amulet. But we see that pretty much what happened is we see that Callum would have looked at the amulet and basically would have looked at it closer and closer, saying, "Am I chosen?" As Ezra says, well, in the history books and everything we've seen or we read as kids, it has to be true, Callum. You're the Trollhunter. You're the Messiah, I guess. As we see that Callum would have been kind of ecstatic, but also kind of scared because he had a responsibility now. As a kid, he was always told that the Trollhunter was a warrior, a man of many talents, but also had so much pain and rage underneath his heart. The Trollhunter was a title that you had to bring and had to hold for the entirety of your entire life. And eventually, you would have to die and pass on the power of the Trollhunter. The Trollhunter has broken up families. The mantle of it has killed and has been fought over for decades. Whole entire kingdoms and civilizations have killed themselves and destroyed thousands and thousands of landmarks just for the title of it alone, just for the Trollhunter's approval. The Trollhunter is such a prominent figure in this magical world that even being chosen, even unknowingly, could change your entire life for the better or for the worse. What happened is Callum would have eventually went his own merry way, telling Ezra to not tell anybody about this, as he wants to talk to Dad and he wants to figure this out and he wants to tell him, what next? I'm the Trollhunter. How am I going to, figure this out? But during that time, Callum is walking off, as eventually Callum stopped by some sort of white-haired girl, Rayla. Rayla would have stopped him, saying, "Who are you? Are you the Prince Ezra?" As he would have basically seen that she would have taken out her blades, cornering him, as he would have said, "Well," as he would have grabbed the sheets, or pretty much the curtains in the hallway, and would have chucked it on top of her, and he would have started to book it. As he would have looked at the amulet, about to say, "Daylight is mine to command. Daylight is mine to command. Daylight is mine to command." But nothing would have happened. Bro, plot. Plot. I'm about to make this man an absolute joker for the next couple of seasons. But we see that Callum absolutely starts to trip up and starts to run, eventually him finding his way into the glory room, or basically, pause. Whoa, glory room. Whoa, I gotta stop myself. But what would happen is he would have bumped into a wall, fallen himself into the study, or into Claudia's father's study, as he would have looked over, as Rayla would have found him and basically would have cornered him, saying that you're the Prince Ezra, right? I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to kill your father. As they start to talk out, and he tries to convince her not to do that, or else she might be sorry, as Callum was about to just say the words again, praying, hoping it works again, but him being saved last minute by Bait and Ezra, as they dip out, going through the, I guess you could say, not magic, but basically secret passageway behind the painting. Now, Ezra would have gone into these caverns after the whole entire incident and conversation between Callum and them, and Callum figuring out that he was the Trollhunter and all this other stuff, as eventually he would have ran in there, and him being followed soon after by, Rayla. Rayla would have followed him and basically would have started to absolutely chase these guys down relentlessly. I mean, like, god damn. Let them breathe. Let them breathe, bro. Breathe. As they start to dip it, but them eventually getting caught up, and basically Ezra finding his way through this passageway, touching all the stones and leading them down into an area. Callum looks into this area and basically looks over and sees a glowing egg, or some sort of glowing object underneath a cloak. He looks at Ezra and says, "What is this place, and what is that?" They look at each other as Ezra says, This is the thing I was trying to show you before you turned all Trollhunter on me. The whole thing I was trying to figure out before everything happened." But he would have walked off, as Ezra and Callum's whole conversation between them talking about dad dying and everything like that would have happened off screen before Callum would have gone to the library and basically would have looked through the books more and more, finding out a little bit more about the Trollhunter, but him eventually finding his way through the hallway and eventually being cornered by Rayla. Now what would happen is during this time, we see that they get cornered and Rayla is told by Ezra that she needs to see something, as they eventually show her the egg. And Callum is shocked. Him like, what the freak? Dude, the egg's alive? The Dragon Prince's heir is alive. You're telling me a war that's about to happen over this egg. A war that's about to crush this place. Absolutely destroy civilizations and people and relationships between people. Can all be evaded because we kept the eggs for ourselves? We kept the egg for ourselves? We see that they start to talk it out, and basically Rayla says that this is a perfect opportunity. This can save both of their people, and with them not taking this and them just letting this, pretty much slide because the egg isn't destroyed, they could stop a lot of wars from happening. They can stop this. They can save their dad, Callum is thinking, but Rayla looks at her arm and says it's not that simple. It's things we have to put into equation, but this could save a lot of people. The egg can stop the war. As they start to figure it out, but eventually them being pretty much cornered up by Claudia. Claudia tells them to dip out and basically telling them that they're going to keep them safe, and she's going to absolutely fry this dirty elf. Pause. This sounds so racially motivated. Oh my gosh, I think Claudia is racist towards elves. But what would happen is she basically tells them to get away from the dirty elf. That sounds so racially motivated. But we see that she tells them to get away from the elf, and if she makes a single move, she's going to fry her alive. I mean, just fry her alive. Season fillet her, bro. Season fillet her. Extra slap your mama seasoning on that bitch. But we see that she absolutely gets dropped as Callum yells out and says, by the glory of Merlin, daylight is mine to command. As a huge bright blue light envelops Callum and the armor appears, and also his sword. They all look at awe. Well, not Ezra, since he's seen this before, but Ezra is still kind of, pretty much in awe by this because it's a freaking glowing piece of armor. Like, who wouldn't be shocked and also freaking awesome and, freaking having an orgasm? But what happened is Claudia would have looked at this saying, Callum, you're the Trollhunter? As basically we would see that, well, pretty much Rayla would have said, the Trollhunter died only a couple hours ago. What? As basically we see that Callum would have summoned his blade and basically would have told Claudia to stay back and that this could save lives, and that it's not a whipping, Claudia, it's an egg, and it needs to get back to his mother. This can save lives, it can stop wars. Do you understand that? As Claudia says, no. My father, as she is told by, Ezra, to shut up, that this can save lives, and that your father doesn't know what he's talking about. As she says to shut up, as she shocks a big lightning blast towards the elf, but, Ezra basically jumps out the way, as pretty much Callum kicks Rayla out of the way and takes the lightning bolt full on. The magic basically stops electricity and takes the most of the blow, since, the magic armor does take a lot of the kinetic energy and force from certain attacks. You can see it in the show. He doesn't really get full on damage most of the time, so he gets sent flying into the wall as he grabs the chair and basically kicks it towards Rayla. Not Rayla, but Claudia. Claudia dodges out of the way as Callum jumps over the door, or jumps over the pretty much desk he threw at her or kicked at her, as he basically grabs the chain on the ceiling and locks up Claudia, telling her to stay calm and to stay here. This can save people's lives, and I'm going to save as many lives as I can. I have a responsibility now. As he dips out and he starts to book it, as the magic power that he's pretty much exerting right now, since his 2 transformations and also basically him taking a lot of energy and all that magical energy dispersing off of him, some of the trolls on the other side of the world are starting to figure out that the Trollhunter's been chosen again. And pretty much, well, they're sending one of their best trolls to find him and mentor him. Well, an ancestor of Blinky. Blinky himself, scratch that. Blinky is back, baby! Blinky is back alongside another fellow character? Type elf, you know what I'm saying? But let's just dive right into it. So, what happened is they would start to book it, but eventually Rayla would have been cornered by one of her elf friends from earlier, and basically they would have all looked at it. She would have looked at him, and they would have stared down at each other. But as we're coming out of the pretty much crates from earlier, as you can see the scene. If you've seen the scene, you know what I'm talking about. But what happened is Ezra would have convinced him, or not tried to convince him, but would have tried to convince him to stop this. And Rayla helping them as well, saying that this could save lives. The egg is alive. It's not destroyed. We're fighting a war. We're fighting over something that had never even happened. But him saying that, that's amazing, Rayla, but that is not that simple. As they start to duke it out, and eventually, well, Callum and Ezra book it, as eventually Ezra walks up the steps, and everybody sees his armor and the medallion, especially Claudia's father, and says that, why are you here? He tries to tell him that it's something that's going to change, something's going to happen, as Callum tries to tell them to basically move. As Callum gets stopped by Claudia's brother, as tells him that your new fancy armor isn't going to stop me, kid. As he's too pretty much naive to witness or pretty much, well, recognize that he's the freaking Trollhunter. So, but same thing, Callum isn't he isn't per se trained in the way of the sword. And that whole entire scene with the demon dogs following pretty much Callum and Rayla, as you know that happened in the scene, would have never happened. I just skimmed over that part because he did absolutely drop Claudia by throwing an entire freaking desk at her and chaining her up to the ceiling. But what would happen is we would see that pretty much Callum would have tried to slice through them, but eventually Claudia's father using his magic to take away his voice, as Callum would have tried to yell for his father's help, but him fighting off these multiple other knights. But eventually the dark elves or the moon elves would have shown up and basically started to slaughter these guys like freaking butcher. But one of the moon elves would have saw pretty much Callum and seen that he was the Trollhunter, a human one at that. He would have tried to lunge towards Callum, but Callum would have drop kicked him, basically breaking his whole entire psyche and snapping that man's neck on impact, because it's a freaking teenage boy hurtling towards you with full strength and drop kicking you with a suit of armor that's magic, bro. You're going to die. Like, bro, the physics behind someone drop kicking you in a full body armor is insane. You will literally feel so much inertia on your body that you don't even understand. You will literally feel every bone in your body crack and break. But what happened is we would see that Callum would have started to try to get out there as fast as possible, but he would have seen that it was no real reason or no real way to get out. He would have tried to go down the stairs, but it being too many knights going up there since his earlier brigade of him trying to start a fight earlier, as Callum would have basically chucked his sword through the window and basically would have chucked himself through the window, him falling in a bag of hay, and him basically de-transforming out of his armor and grabbing the amulet and pinning it in his back pocket. He would have started to run, basically telling them that there's no use and he couldn't do anything. They would have started to run it off, as eventually that whole scene would have stopped, and the king would have, well, supposedly died. During this entire time, during this entire mishap and misfortune, we would see that, well, Callum would have been in his own world. Callum would have been sad, and him not trying to think too much about his father, and him not trying to accept the fact that his father might be dead. And he didn't want to tell Ezra that either. He didn't want to tell any of that. He didn't want to face that truth. But later on, we'll see the downfall of, well, Callum's psyche and the hardships and pain that he's going to be going through with him being the Trollhunter, and the amount of responsibility he's going to be having to take. And amount of heartbreak and, let's just say, rage that Callum's going to be facing is going to be irreversible. And Callum is going to reach so much adulthood and so much responsibility that you won't even understand or won't even recognize his character to a fact. But we're gonna end it off here, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And as always, guys, have a blessed day. And before I dip out, yeah, so this is gonna be a humorous what if, but it's going to be it's gonna tackle a lot of topics like depression and a bunch of other real world topics, because I want to actually tackle real world emotions, topics, and also things, and actually give you guys kind of a lesson in every single what if, because what ifs are just, for entertainment, but I legit want to cover real emotional problems and actually go through scene to scene, back and forth, like other what ifers do. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. And as always, guys, have a blessed day. Deuces.